Commander Vex Kronal stood atop his obsidian throne, his forearms spread wide like some grotesque spider, celebrating its latest catch. The Galactic Dominion's most feared apex, Warlord, surveyed the trembling delegates below with predatory satisfaction. His crimson eyes swept across the assembled representatives from 17 different species, each one cowering under his merciless gaze. Pathetic, he hissed through razor-sharp teeth, his voice echoing through the massive war chamber. Your civilizations have grown soft, weak, complacent. You dare come before me seeking mercy. The Altrian ambassador, a crystalline being whose usual blue glow had dimmed to a fearful gray, shuffled forward on unsteady legs. Great Warlord Kronal, please reconsider. Our worlds have already surrendered 90% of our resources. Our people are starving. Kronal's laugh was like grinding metal. And yet you still breathe. I call that excessive generosity. A murmur of despair rippled through the gathered delegates. The Zenthri representative, a six-legged insectoid creature, clicked his mandibles nervously. Perhaps if we can negotiate new terms. Negotiate? Kronal descended from his throne with predatory grace, each footstep thundering against the polished floor. The time for negotiation ended when your species decided resistance was futile. Now you exist at my pleasure, and my pleasure grows thin. That's when she walked in. The massive doors of the war chamber slid open with a mechanical groan, and every eye in the room turned toward the entrance. There, silhouetted against the harsh corridor lighting, stood a figure that made absolutely no sense. A human, a young human female. To be precise, she couldn't have been more than 20 Earth years old, standing barely 5.5 feet tall. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore nothing more threatening than a standard jumpsuit and worn combat boots. No armor, no visible weapons, no royal insignia or diplomatic credentials. She looked, for all intents and purposes, like someone who had wandered into the wrong building. The silence stretched for exactly 15 seconds. Kronal counted them, his predatory instincts momentarily confused by this unexpected variable. In those 15 seconds, the girl stood perfectly still, her brown eyes scanning the room with almost casual interest. Then she moved. What happened next would be debated in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The girl, whose name was apparently Maya Chen according to the intelligence reports that would later flood every government database, took exactly 3 steps forward and launched herself into the air. Her right leg snapped out in a motion so fast that most of the delegates missed it entirely. Her boot connected with Kronal's chest plate with a sound like a starship hull rupturing. The apex warlord, who had conquered 47 star systems and whose personal combat record included victories over champions from every known warrior species, flew backward through the air like a discarded toy. He crashed through his obsidian throne, sending chunks of polished stone flying in every direction, before slamming into the reinforced wall behind with enough force to crack the metal plating. He slid down the wall and crumpled to the floor, unconscious. The war chamber fell into a silence so complete that the ambient hum of the space station's life support systems sounded like thunder. Maya landed gracefully, brushed an imaginary speck of dust from her jumpsuit, and turned to address the stunned delegates. Her voice was cheerful, almost conversational. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder getting through the asteroid field. The Altrian ambassador's crystalline form flickered between several different colors before settling on a confused yellow. How did you? Oh, right. Introductions. Maya extended her hand in the peculiar human greeting ritual. Maya Chen, Earth Diplomatic Corps. Well, technically I'm more of a problem solver than a diplomat, but the paperwork was already filed. So here we are. The Zenthri representative's compound eyes focused and refocused rapidly. You just defeated Warlord Kronal with a single kick. Yeah, about that. Maya glanced over at the unconscious Warlord with mild interest. Is he always this dramatic with the whole throne thing? Because honestly, it's a bit much. Very evil overlord circa 2387, if you ask me. But he's killed entire armies, stammered a delegate from the Corvan Empire, his scaled skin shifting through panic colors. His battle armor can withstand plasma cannons, his personal shield generators. Maya interrupted with a snort of laughter. Oh, you mean this stuff? She walked over to where Kronal lay sprawled and nudged his armored form with her boot. Yeah, this is designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles. Pretty standard galactic tech, honestly. But see, here's the thing about armor. She crouched down and tapped the cracked chest plate with her knuckle. It's only as strong as the person wearing it. I don't understand, the Altrian ambassador said, his blue glow returning slightly as curiosity overcame fear. Maya stood and dusted off her hands. Humans come for what you folks call a death world, right? Earth. Gravity 2.3 times galactic standard. Atmospheric pressure that would crush most of your species. Weather patterns that include frozen water falling from the sky. And wind speeds that can level buildings. She began pacing around the room, her casual manner a stark contrast to the devastation she had just caused. So, when a human grows up in that environment, when every day is basically survival training from birth, well, she shrugged. Let's just say we develop differently than most species. The delegates exchanged uncertain glances. The concept of Deathworlders was known throughout the galaxy, but humans were considered a minor species, barely worth mentioning in most galactic databases. Kronal there, Maya continued, gesturing toward the unconscious Warlord. He's used to fighting within the accepted parameters of galactic civilization. Energy shields, powered armor, plasma weapons, the whole technological arms race. But you know what nobody ever told him? She paused dramatically, enjoying the rapt attention of her audience. Sometimes the old ways work better. A new voice cut through the chamber, cold and mechanical. Fascinating. Every head turned toward the entrance, where a figure in sleek black armor stood silhouetted against the corridor lights. This was General Zeph Kardek, Kronal's second-in-command, and widely considered the most dangerous assassin in the known galaxy. General Kardek, Maya said with mock formality, giving him a little wave. Right on schedule. I was wondering when you'd show up. Kardek's helmet retracted, revealing a face that was more machine than organic matter. Cybernetic implants covered half his skull, and his left eye had been replaced with a targeting system that glowed with malevolent red light. You have made a grave error, human, he said, his voice distorted by vocal modulators. Kronal may have been unprepared for your primitive tactics. I am not. Maya tilted her head, considering. You know, everyone keeps saying that. But here's what I find funny about galactic civilization. She began walking toward him with the same casual confidence she had shown from the moment she entered the room. You've all become so dependent on technology that you've forgotten the most basic rule of combat. And what rule is that? Kardek asked, his weapon systems humming to life. Maya's smile was sharp as a blade. The deadliest weapon in the universe is still a prepared mind in a healthy body. Kardek's plasma rifle charged with a high-pitched whine. We shall see. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates dug for cover behind whatever furniture they could find. Energy bolts screamed through the air, leaving scorched trails in their wake. But Maya was no longer where the shots were aimed. She moved like liquid lightning, her body flowing around the deadly energy beams, as if she could see them coming seconds before they fired. Which, as it turned out, she could. The thing about cybernetic targeting systems, she called out conversationally while dodging another barrage, is that they follow predictable patterns. Very sophisticated patterns, sure, but still predictable if you know what to look for. Kardek snarled and switched to full automatic, filling the air with a deadly web of plasma fire. Maya dropped into a slide that carried her beneath the barrage and rolled behind a chunk of the destroyed throne. Plus, her voice continued from behind cover, they make you overconfident. You start thinking the tech makes you invincible. A piece of obsidian stone flew out from behind her cover, striking Kardek's weapon with unerring accuracy. The plasma rifle sparked and died, its delicate focusing array shattered. But technology, Maya said, rising from cover with that same unsettling calm, is just tools. And tools are only as good as the person using them. Kardek drew twin energy blades, their edges crackling with enough power to cut through starship hulls. Then let us settle this with more traditional methods. Now you're talking my language. What followed was a dance of death that would have been beautiful if it weren't so terrifying. Kardek moved with the enhanced speed and precision of his cybernetic implants, his energy blades leaving trails of superheated air as they carved through the space where Maya had been fractions of a second before. But Maya moved like something that belonged in the realm of physics professors' nightmares. She flowed around his attacks with an economy of motion that suggested she was expending no more effort than someone might use to brush their teeth. "You know what your problem is, Kardek?" she said, while ducking under a strike that would have decapitated her. "You're fighting like a machine." She pivoted on her left foot and drove her elbow into his solar plexus with enough force to crack his armor plating. Kardek staggered backward, his systems recalibrating. "But I'm not fighting a machine," she continued, pressing her advantage. "I'm fighting a person who thinks he's a machine." Her knee came up to meet his descending chin, snapping his head back and sending him stumbling. Before he could recover, her fist connected with his temple in a perfectly executed right cross that somehow found the one unarmored gap in his helmet's design. Kardek hit the floor harder than his boss had, his cybernetic system sparking and failing as consciousness fled. Maya stood over both unconscious warlords, barely breathing hard, and turned back to the stunned delegates. "So," she said brightly, "shall we discuss new terms for this whole Galactic Dominion thing?" The Altrian ambassador's glow had shifted to something that might have been awe. How is this possible?" Maya's grin was full of teeth and dark humor. "Oh, that's the beautiful part. You want to know the real reason humans are classified as Deathworlders." She gestured around the destroyed chamber, at the two most feared warriors in the galaxy lying unconscious at her feet. "It's not just because our planet is trying to kill us every day. It's because we learned to enjoy the challenge." 3 hours later, Maya sat in what had formerly been Warlord Kronal's private conference room, her boots propped up on a massive table, while she munched on something the food synthesizers had optimistically labeled as Earth-style pizza. The delegates sat around her in various states of bewildered fascination, still trying to process what they had witnessed. "So let me get this straight," said Ambassador Thek of the Rylan Confederacy, his tentacles writhing nervously. "Your species sent you here alone to negotiate with the most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy?" Maya swallowed a bite of the questionable pizza and shrugged. "Well, technically they sent a whole diplomatic team, but our ship got attacked by pirates about 6 systems back, and I was the only one who made it to an escape pod." She paused, considering. "Actually, that's not entirely accurate either. I was the only one who fit in the escape pod after I loaded it with all the emergency rations." The Zen 3 representative's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "You left your fellow diplomats behind?" "Oh, no," Maya said, waving her hand dismissively. "I left them with the pirates. Trust me, by now Ambassador Williams has probably talked them into surrendering and joining the diplomatic corps. The man could negotiate peace between a supernova and a black hole. But the Altrian ambassador pressed. "You came here knowing you would face Kronal alone?" Maya's expression grew thoughtful. "You know, that's actually a really good question. See, the thing about humans is that we have this weird quirk in our psychology. Most species, when they encounter a problem that seems impossible to solve, they look for ways around it. Humans," she grinned, "we tend to go straight through it." "Through it?" "Yep. Take Kronal, for example. Everyone in the galaxy was terrified of him because he had the biggest ships, the most advanced weapons, the scariest reputation. But nobody ever asked a really important question." She leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "What happens when someone just doesn't care about any of that stuff?" Before anyone could answer, the conference room's doors hissed open, and a squad of heavily armed soldiers stormed in. Their leader, a massive Corvin with scales that shifted through aggressive red patterns, raised his plasma rifle toward Maya. "Nobody move," he growled. "I am Captain Brix Thorne of the Dominion Guard. You are all under arrest for treason against the Galactic Dominion." Maya didn't even look up from her pizza. "Oh, good. I was wondering when the rest of Kronal's command structure would show up. This saved me the trouble of hunting you all down." Captain Thorne's scales flickered with confusion. "You will surrender immediately or we will open fire." "That's adorable," Maya said, finally turned to look at him. "You think you're in charge here." "I have 12 heavily armed soldiers," Thorne snarled. "You have a slice of pizza." Maya stood up slowly, brushing crumbs from her jumpsuit. You know what your boss's biggest mistake was? And his lieutenant's biggest mistake? And what's about to be your biggest mistake? What? Thorne demanded, though his weapon hand had started to tremble slightly. You keep assuming that being human means I fight fair. The lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on a moment later, casting the room in an eerie red glow. But in that brief moment of darkness, Maya had simply vanished. Where is she? Thorne roared, his squad spinning in circles as they tried to track their target. Find her. Behind you, Maya's voice said cheerfully. Thorne spun around, but she wasn't behind him. The voice had come from the air vents. No, wait. Her voice continued from a completely different direction. That was yesterday. Today I'm over here. A soldier to Thorne's left suddenly crumpled to the ground, his weapon clattering away. The others opened fire at the spot where he had been standing, but Maya was already somewhere else entirely. You see, her voice continued conversationally as another soldier went down. Growing up on a death world teaches you some interesting skills, like how to move silently through hostile terrain, how to use the environment to your advantage, how to turn any space into a hunting ground. 3 more soldiers collapsed in rapid succession, their weapons disappearing into the shadows with them. Thorne and his remaining men clustered together, their backs to the conference table as they tried to cover all possible angles of attack. But the most important thing it teaches you, Maya's voice said, now coming from directly above them, is patience. She dropped from the ceiling like a vengeful angel, landing squarely on the conference table. Before Thorne could bring his weapon to bear, her foot connected with his wrist, sending the plasma rifle flying across the room. And timing, she added, driving her elbow into the solar plexus of the soldier to her right. What followed was less a fight than a demonstration in applied physics. Maya moved through the remaining guards like water flowing around stones, each movement precise and economical. No wasted motion, no unnecessary violence, just the absolute minimum force required to render each opponent unconscious. In less than 30 seconds, she was the only person left standing. She hopped down from the table and began collecting the scattered weapons, stacking them neatly in the corner of the room. Sorry about that, she said to the delegates, who had watched the entire display with expressions of mingled terror and fascination. Where were we? You were explaining why your species sent you alone, the Vrylin ambassador managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Right. Maya settled back into her chair and picked up her pizza again. So here's the thing. The Earth Diplomatic Corps has been watching the Galactic situation for a while now, and we noticed something interesting. Every time someone tries to negotiate with warlords and tyrants using traditional diplomatic methods, it never actually works. She took another bite and continued talking around it. You offer them concessions. They demand more. You give them territory. They want entire systems. You try to appease them, and they just see weakness. It's a losing game. But surely violence cannot be the answer to every diplomatic crisis. The Altrian ambassador protested. Maya's smile turned positively predatory. Oh, but that's where you're wrong. See, violence isn't the answer. Violence is a question. The answer is yes. The delegate stared at her in horrified fascination. Look, Maya said, her tone becoming more serious. I didn't come here to start a war. I came here to end one. The Galactic Dominion has been terrorizing civilized space for decades, conquering worlds and enslaving species, all because nobody was willing to do what needed to be done. And what needed to be done? The Zen-3 representative asked. Somebody needed to walk up to the biggest, baddest, most terrifying warlord in the galaxy, Maya said, and kick him in the face. She gestured toward the unconscious forms of Kronal and Kardek, who had been dragged into the conference room by her earlier and now lay zip-tied in the corner. Because here's what nobody seems to understand about bullies. They're not actually tough. They're just used to people being afraid of them. But their military might, the Corvin delegate protested. Their fleets, their armies, are commanded by people, Maya interrupted. People who, it turns out, are really bad at their jobs when they're unconscious. As if summoned by her words, a communication panel on the wall crackled to life. A holographic display materialized, showing the bridge of what appeared to be the Dominion's flagship. The figure in the command chair was another armored warrior, though his insignia marked him as an admiral. "This is Admiral Voss Reclan of the Dominion Fleet," the figure announced. "I demand to speak with whoever is responsible for the attack on our command station." Maya waved at the display. "Hi there, Admiral. Maya Chen, Earth Diplomatic Corps. I think we need to talk." Admiral Reclan's expression was hidden behind his helmet, but his posture radiated barely controlled fury. "You will release our commanders immediately, or we will reduce that station to molecular debris." "Okay, 2 problems with that plan," Maya said, holding up fingers. "First, your commanders are kind of indisposed at the moment. And second, threatening to blow up the station where your boss is currently tied up seems like poor strategic thinking. We have over 200 warships in this system," Reclan snarled. "You have nothing." Maya's grin widened. "I have something better than warships, Admiral. I have a really good understanding of human psychology. And more importantly, I have a really good understanding of how command structures work." She stood up and walked closer to the display. "See, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stand down your fleet, release all the worlds you've conquered, and disband the Galactic Dominion. Then you're going to go home and find honest work." Reclan's laugh was harsh and mechanical. "And why would I do that?" "Because," Maya said, her voice dropping to a conversational whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout, "if you don't, I'm going to do to you what I did to your commanders. And I'm going to do it in front of your entire crew. And then I'm going to work my way through your entire fleet, ship by ship, until every single person in your command structure has been personally introduced to my boot." The Admiral was silent for a long moment. "You're bluffing. One person cannot threaten an entire fleet." Maya's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. The delegates, who had been growing comfortable with her casual manner, suddenly remembered that this seemingly ordinary young woman had just defeated 2 of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy with her bare hands. "Admiral," she said softly, "I want you to do something for me. I want you to look up everything your intelligence services have on file about humans. Specifically, I want you to look up our military history." Another pause. "Pay special attention to our performance in asymmetric warfare scenarios. Small forces against larger ones. Individuals against armies. David versus Goliath situations." The Admiral's helmet turned slightly, as if he were consulting someone off-screen. "And when you're done with that," Maya continued, "I want you to ask yourself one very important question. If humans are capable of the things described in those files, and if they sent just one of their people to deal with your entire dominion, what does that tell you about how confident they are in that person's abilities?" The silence stretched for nearly a full minute. When Admiral Reclan finally spoke again, his voice had lost much of its earlier bluster. "What are your terms?" Maya's smile returned bright and cheerful. "Oh, I'm so glad you asked. The terms are actually pretty simple. Full withdrawal from all conquered territories within 1 standard galactic month. Reparations to be paid to all affected worlds at a rate to be determined by an independent tribunal. And Kronal, Kardek, and any other war criminals in your command structure get handed over to face justice. And in return, Maya said, I don't have to get creative about demonstrating why humans are classified as Deathworlders." Another long pause. Then, reluctantly, agreed. The holographic display flickered and died. Maya turned back to the delegates, who were staring at her with expressions of awe, terror, and something that might have been hope. "And that," she said, settling back into her chair and picking up her pizza again, "is how you negotiate with a warlord." The Alterian ambassador's glow had shifted to a warm golden color. "I don't understand. How can you be sure he'll honor the agreement?" Maya's laugh was genuinely delighted. "Oh, that's the best part. See, the thing about bullies is that once you show them you're not afraid, they don't actually want to fight anymore. Because deep down, they know they've been getting by on reputation rather than actual skill." She gestured toward the unconscious forms of Kronal and Kardek. These 2 spent so long being feared that they forgot how to actually be dangerous. They got comfortable, soft, and comfort is the enemy of competence. But what if Admiral Reclan changes his mind? The Zenthari representative asked. Maya's smile took on a distinctly predatory edge. "Then I guess I'll have to take a little trip to pay him a personal visit. And trust me, nobody wants that. Because the next time I have to solve a problem like this, I might not be feeling quite so diplomatic about it. She stood up and stretched, her casual manner returning. But honestly, I don't think it'll come to that. Word is going to spread pretty quickly about what happened here today. Every tyrant and warlord in the galaxy is going to hear about how the mighty Galactic Dominion got taken down by one human with a bad attitude and good reflexes. And that will be enough? The Corvin delegate asked. That'll be more than enough, Maya confirmed. Because the one thing bullies fear more than anything else is the idea that their victims might stop being afraid. And today, we just showed the entire galaxy that there's nothing to fear from people who rely on intimidation instead of actual strength. She walked over to the viewport that looked out over the asteroid field, where the Dominion fleet hung in space, their weapons powered down in accordance with the newly negotiated ceasefire. You know what the funny thing is? She said, her reflection ghost-like in the transparent steel. My superiors back on Earth were worried that sending just one person might not be enough. They thought maybe they should send a whole team or a military escort, or at least someone with more diplomatic experience. She turned back to the assembled delegates, her grin bright with mischief and satisfaction. I can't wait to tell them how wrong they were.